Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and very excited to introduce a previous guest we had on the show not too long ago, Margaret Knapp. Good morning, Margaret.
Hey, good morning, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing well. Now, you are a singer-songwriter, and the last time we spoke to you, you mentioned, or you talked about your reversion that happened during the pandemic. For those that are new listeners out there, maybe give us a quick refresher of that moment, that one moment that brought you back to the Catholic faith.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just give the highlight that you so kindly put together for the Instagram reel. It was great. Yeah, so basically, when I moved back in with my parents at the beginning of COVID, like many people did my age, and lots of older people too, we all moved back in together during COVID. My parents were watching Mass in the living room, and I had missed that part of my life by not living with them for a few years, because they were really the main driver in my spiritual life before I had left the house. So when I came back and saw that, something clicked and made me realize, like, wow, this is who I am. This is part of my life. Like, it's always going to be a part of me and what defines who I am. So, and that's Christ, right? So really just their example has led me back on this path to, daily mass and the rosary and learning about the liturgy and the history of the church and our faith. So, and all the saints. So it's been an incredible ride the past 4 years or so coming back, but I was a cradle Catholic, so I should have known better, but I came back, right? So that's God's saving grace. But yeah, that's kind of my reversion story.
No, it's such a beautiful and striking image of, having your parents be kneeling during televised mass. So thank you for sharing that once again. And the show's kind of topic is, are we an Alleluia people? So how did your Catholic faith come into play when creating your music and now your debut album?
Oh yeah, well, I was listening to your conversation with Julie this morning before joining, and the Alleluia people as a musician, I mean, the whole point is to give glory to God. And our album is really about making sure that we're not just competing with secular music or even just like the Christian praise and worship, but it's just like something original and beautiful that reflects the truth, which is the truth of Jesus Christ. So I'm not like going out there and doing specifically Christian praise and worship music the way that most people hear it, but my music does glorify God in the fact that like the themes and the underlying like tones and emotions that I want to convey like are all principles of like virtue or things like hope and perseverance and sanctification and thanking God. So these are all themes throughout the entire album, exploring love and connection that I think anybody listening, regardless of who they are, could listen to. And also family friendly. That was like our biggest focus, was that children can listen to this. You're not going to be like in some weird satanic like influence from the media. We're trying to provide godly, spiritually inspired like music that can be heard by anybody. So that's really the point.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's something else. I'll tell you that. I was able to listen to the entirety of it not too long ago. And what would you say is the genre of it? Because like you said, it's not like secular music, but it's also not like worship music. It's something beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that I'm like trying to do anything better. I mean, I have Bring Me to Your Peace on the end of my album, which is like very much like could be on any Christian radio station, but what we're kind of up against in that particular field is that like most Christian praise and worship like industry is like Protestant, and we have a lot. Like Guadalupe Radio is amazing, EWTN is amazing. I know there's lots of Catholic artists out there working individually, but there's such a need that we're seeing like messages pouring in about this album, like where was this? Like, why was I listening to the radio growing up when, there was other influences? So I was like, just trying to help be the answer to that. And so are my producers who will join us later for the after show. So
Yes, Christopher St. Clair and Christopher Adams. Looking forward to that here shortly. I do have a question though. What was the most memorable moment or experience you had while recording this new album?
Um, at first it was really just because I wanted to get my music recorded, and then as things started to unfold between the three of us, we realized that we were on a mission. And I'm like gonna get emotional talking about it, but it's actually so incredible. And actually watching Guadalupe Radio and like meeting the network and like the one locally here in DC with Joe Schuler, just connecting with some other Catholics that are just on fire for the faith and media, and you know also they're joining us in the fight. Like we have a lot of the same objectives with what we're doing with music and media and art. So it's just been incredible to interact with you all and to interact with Joe locally. So awesome, and has
Mm-hmm.
connected us with some great people already. So we're really just working on getting the message out there and helping promote, Guadalupe and any other Catholic artists and businesses that want to partner in this. So yeah,
That's great. Yeah, iron sharpens iron, and that's especially
yeah.
prevalent and needed in the creative landscape and music landscape. So it's great, and we love our station out there in the DC and the folks that listen there. So shout out to all of them out there. Now, were there any challenges you faced while writing these songs for the new album?
Well, this is my first time recording like a studio album, and Christopher St. Clair has recorded for like, I don't know, maybe 2 decades now.
Yeah.
I've forever. So he and Mr. Adams, who you'll meet, um, have worked together on music for a long time. So it's because of their work together that I'm able to benefit from Christopher St. Clair's like expertise in production. And the challenge is really like pushing through energy wise just to get something done. Like, knowing why it's important and knowing why you should, like, it's worth pushing yourself for. And I'm really not that good at it, but Christopher St. Clair has helped me so much through this whole process because he always pushes me to do more. And I feel like that's why the album sounds the way that it does and it has the
Hmm.
message that it does. So, and also because of Christopher Adams. So we met because of Christopher Adams. So, like, we'll tell you more about our story maybe in the
Yeah.
after show clubhouse, but it's really incredible. So yeah, it probably just, persevering, knowing that we're, kind of up against something a little bit more than just, okay, we're releasing an album. It's like, um, doing promotion, and how do you do that without, trying to sound like or feel vain by promoting yourself, but
Sure.
like the message behind it is good, and like you want to make sure that's portrayed correctly. So yeah,
Yeah.
just kind of making sure we're doing it the right way.
And yeah, just listening to it, I would have never known it would be your first debut album, just because of how beautifully it's done by your own talent, but then also the talent behind the scenes with the production. So it's very well done. Now you mentioned the message a couple of times. What would you say you want the message to be
Yeah.
shown to the audience that would be listening to your music?
Wow. I mean, hopefully just listen to Bring Me to Your Light, and that's my prayer. Um, the lyrics talk about like, you know, I know I'm nervous, turn it into your wisdom. I know that I'm reckless, like breathe your life to that fire there. Like, so the lyrics themselves will kind of represent in that specific song. That's like probably the most specific, like Christian praise and worship song that I have, but all the other songs will kind of echo
Hmm.
the same message. So really like I just want people to know the light of Christ. And the song's called Bring Me to Your Peace, but it's the chorus says Bring Me to Your Light. So
Mm, that's awesome. Are there
yeah.
any live performances or tours planned at all to promote the album?
So I am hoping like we have to announce soon for Catholic Palooza. So I don't want to like give away any other artists, but like I'm hoping to play Catholic Palooza. That's in the works right now with a band for the album. I know that the Chris's are in for that, and actually we even have another Chris for the drummer. So it's going to be me and the Chris's. So
That's funny. So you mentioned Catholic Palooza. For those that are
Mhm.
unfamiliar, maybe give us a quick rundown of what that is before we head on to our break here.
Yeah, it's actually really incredible. A lot of Catholic Instagram has quite a unique community that, I actually met you through. So this is, just the body of Christ, right? This amazing. But so, yeah, really just connecting with them and uh, Catholic Palooza has been a collaboration between all these people. And they really have the same message that we do in a lot of ways, in that we want to create original art from these artists, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, like I mentioned, like that praise and worship style. Like if you like grunge music or, like Morrissey, then you've got Daniel from Hallowed, and he rocks. Like he, brought down the house at Catholic Palooza last year, and people were loving his set. So, yeah, and like Enoch brought a lot of attention as well. I mean, there's so many talented artists. And Wafers 3D, that's his screen name, but his name's Adam. They're all really, really awesome guys. And then Father Maximilian Mary Dean, who I've had the privilege to work with recently because of the connections on the Catholic community online, like has become sort of like the de facto like chaplain of Catholic Palooza, and has really been just like a spiritual father to all of us in the movement. So really awesome group there. Definitely check it out. I believe it's July 27th at the Williams Center in New Jersey, right outside New York City. So yeah, thanks for making us go to New Jersey, guys. But no, I'm sure it'll be great. It's going to be an awesome time. There's going to be two stages, lots of really talented artists. So I'm excited for what they have.
Ah, that's incredible. Thank you so much. So your debut studio album is available on which platforms?
All platforms:
All platforms.
YouTube, Amazon, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you got.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much, Margaret Knapp. Thank you so much for joining us once again on Morning Joy. There's a couple things here. Now, while we're wrapping up Morning Joy where truth matters, there's two things, right? So don't forget, there's Holy Mass after the show on Guadalupe Radio Network. So if you're going to attend that, please pray for us. But for those who are wanting to continue the conversation, head on over to YouTube and Facebook right now. GRN Online is what you want to search for on YouTube. Morning Joy Show for Facebook. For the After Show Clubhouse, we're going to be joined by the producers Christopher St. Clair and Christopher Adams. But hey, God bless. Make it a joyful day.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.
Okay, here we are in the After Show Clubhouse for Morning Joy. I'm producer Tim. Keith, great show today. I love the people you got. Julie, welcome back from Notes of Truth and We Sing Our Faith. This worked out pretty well, having a bunch of musicians on at the same time. So Julie Carrick is the host of We Sing Our Faith, which is heard on Guadalupe Radio Network, featuring Catholic musicians. And then let's do the round of introductions on the bottom row here. Margaret, of course, we're just continuing the conversation with you. Congratulations on the album drop. Yeah. And then
Thank you.
Christopher Adams, you were involved in the project with Margaret, is that right?
Yep.
Welcome. And Christopher St. Clair, welcome to you as well.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I see Margaret has already introduced me a little bit, so I'm glad to glad to divulge all the details about making this album. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to hearing a whole bunch of musicians talking today.
So I got a question. Starting with, I guess it could be you Christopher St. Clair. I just was about to say Christopher and try to see which one would take it first, but I'm not going to do that to you. So you have. I mean, you are involved in a couple or a few of the songs. I know Christopher St. Clair, Temporary is the song. maybe kind of expand like how you have your hands on a lot of the music, whether it's production or musically wise.
Absolutely. So, all of the songs in the album were written by Margaret. Really, my process was when she got into the studio, I would have her lay down the piano or guitar track, depending on the instrument she actually wrote the song on. Lay that down, lay down a vocal track, and then flesh it out from there. The reason that Temporary has the parenthetical St. Clair version, Temporary is a song she released in the past. And so we needed to differentiate it somehow. So she was like, it's the St. Clair version. I said, okay, I guess it is. It's immortalized as such. But I actually, I purposefully did not listen to her previous version of Temporary because I wanted to capture something from the original, the source material, just her and a piano, instead of maybe, some other interpretation of the song. So if you compare the two versions of the song, like where the chorus is placed is different and such, and I just sort of expanded on the songs based on what I thought was organic, and what I thought was really the vibe we were trying to capture. And I think, you asked about what genre it is. Pretty much everybody who's reviewed it so far has called it ethereal. And I think that's something we wanted to capture, because really at the heart of this, we're trying to capture beauty, and beauty is expressed in many ways. And one of the things we would say when we were starting this album was, we don't just want to release a record, we need to build a cathedral. It has to sort of speak for itself aesthetically. And then once you delve into what it actually represents, it's something deep. And so that was kind of the overall, I think, approach to this album.
Yeah, that's the perfect description, ethereal. Because I was listening to it, I'm like, I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm like, it's like heavenly, but it's just, I couldn't find the word. But yeah, that you put it right there. That's perfect. Thank you. Now, Christopher Adams, now you had some creative way with the song. Explain that and maybe your background and how you got your hands involved.
So I met Margaret around last spring, and so we pretty quickly realized that we were both musicians, and I realized that she had a whole other set of music already released, right? And so working with Christopher St. Clair for all this time, I was kind of intrigued by seeing where this relationship could go. And so, I heard her previous recordings, which are, they're pretty good on them in themselves. But,
Garage band.
I thought, Garage band versus what we could do at, St. Clair's house in the studio, what we could do there. And so in the end, Margaret and I ended up meeting, and, over time I said, okay, there's going to be this music festival coming up that is a Catholic festival, and I just, by the way, became a Catholic last spring.
Oh, congratulations!
I'm a brand new Catholic, except I guess I was baptized as a kid, but raised as a Protestant. But anyway, just joined, and after that I said, okay, well, let's see where this goes. So I went to the Catholic Palooza, and I bought Christopher St. Clair. I bought him a ticket to go to the Catholic Palooza, and he can tell you more about his experience with that. But I introduced them to, and I said, okay, you need to meet somebody here. Introduced her. I said, he's got a studio. Because I having worked with Chris for a long time, I just know that there's going to be quality there. There's going to be a lot of professional insight going into the music. So that's how Margaret got involved with St. Clair Studios. But with The Way, talking about The Way, I had relatively minimal influence into any of the writing of that song, but I did the harmonies. So I wrote the harmonies for that. For that one,
Beautiful harmony.
I really enjoyed singing it, and Margaret and I really love singing with Margaret.
No, you wrote more. We conceptualized a lot more than I would have done, like on the recording, than I would like live, because when we say, and what would I say, there's a say in the background, like echoing. And we came up with that because we were like, I feel like I'm hearing that. Like, and we just really liked it.
Right.
So yeah, we came up with that. You wrote a little bit more. He's
Yeah.
being humble. So
Well, it was a fun process. So the whole experience of recording the album, the whole experience, since last spring really has been a pretty fun roller coaster. So
Yeah, music's
Well, I would
really
love to ask a
collaborative.
question to all three, to Margaret and the Chris's. The way that, and I've 15 records in, I remember the first one, as I was writing the music, I understand sometimes why composers can go crazy, because you hear in your head melody, you hear the lyric, you're writing it out, but you also hear in your head instruments that you don't play. Like I would hear parts of a symphony, or I would hear parts of, name it, it's in there. An Indian flute. I mean, stuff that I don't play. I hear it in my head. And then when you come
absolutely.
into the studio and you're saying, okay, I wrote it with this feel, but how do we make it sound like I'm hearing it in my head? And the hardest thing is to have the producer, the people who are part of the production team, take what you're hearing in your head, that you literally can't make the sound, and then bring that sound to life. And then the bad thing is, once I hear it, like once it's complete and we walk out of the final mastering session, then I'm going, okay, I'm done with that record, right? And then the rest of the team goes, no, now you tour the record. Now you live with the record. But for me, it's really bad, because it's like, okay, now I'm done, because it's no longer just in my head, it's out here.
Right.
So how do you deal with that?
wow, you're like
My
hitting on
experience.
some like very relatable things. Go ahead, Christopher Adams.
Yeah, sorry. No, but my experience with St. Clair over the years since we've been recording has been exactly what you're saying. Because I would come with my song that I wrote on guitar, or that I just wrote the melody for, and it was like, let's make this sound like, and he would say the exact word I was looking for and come up with the sound
Oh,
that
he's
I
good
was
at
looking
that.
for.
He can.
So
Christopher St. Clair is like clairvoyant.
we've managed to work fairly well in that respect, and that's the sign of a producer, right? Is if you can take the ideas of the creative, with the artist rather, and the other artists, and put it into sound.
Yeah, what I did for this, the first song that we recorded was The Way, and I very quickly put together a rough draft, which, included the vocal stacks in the background, the sort of ethereal sort of choir thing going on. And Margaret and Chris liked it. And so that was sort of me epitomizing the vision I had for the music going forward. And so when I got the okay from them from The Way, I just proceeded with that sort of mindset for the rest of the songs, and built the cohesion of the entire album around those core concepts I wanted to capture, of the, as you said, like angelic, the ethereal. Like there's the primary singer, there's the primary harmony, and then there's a mysterious chorus of additional voices behind them. And throughout the album, the ethereal voices behind are all three of us, stacked in different ways to create this illusion of, this huge choir. So yeah, I sort of approached it by creating just one song focused on sort of a vision that encapsulated the rest. And once I got approval, I just sort of went with it.
Yeah, wow. And I love what you said about the like anonymous voices in the background. I just think of that as Christopher Adams always quotes, like the cloud of witnesses.
Yep.
We really feel like we're part of the, body of Christ when we've been making this music, and the people we've been connecting with and the connections that we're realizing have been there. It's just no coincidence, and it's just part of being in the body. So it's just been amazing to create with these guys. And Christopher St. Clair does have a very unique intuition into like feelings that I had in the music, and he just gets them. And when I hear the music that he produced, like when he shows me something that he's made, like I'm in shock when I'm listening, because I'm like, whoa, I cannot believe like I'm hearing like the strings that I've always heard, like you were mentioning, Julie, or like, this beautiful harp or whatever else like he's using for the instrumentation. I mean, he has all the liberties with that and just like does such an amazing job. So was so like in shock by hearing how he did that. So
Yeah, I remember I would record years ago, probably I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that. And I would say, hey, can we get like a doumbek, or can we get like a the Indian drum tabla on the background or something like that? Just some kind of thing. And then I would come back and it was like, perfectly worked into the music with a tabla or something similar to
I
that.
love that when you have that, when the artist, and Margaret, I give you kudos to this, because it's very easy to come in as the composer and as the artist, if you will, and to have a mindset of what you want and what you've heard, but then to allow the producer and the rest of the production team to do their job. Like one of the things that blew my mind early on in the recording in recording life was to go into the studio, and you've sent the rough in, the piano or guitar, whatever you've written it on. And then the producer actually takes that, and now you've got your four-piece, and you're laying down that initial four-piece. So you've got the pianist, guitar, bass, drum, you've got them ready to lay it down. And then you hear that, and it elevates the way that you want to sing it. Like it makes you, and here's the example of it. Okay, so this was years and years ago, but Gary Lunn, who's a bass player out of Nashville, fabulous human being. And I had done a record with, back in this is how long ago it was, 1995, 96. And then in 2011, all those years had passed, and I was back in Nashville doing a record, and we walked into the studio together, and Gary looks at me, I look at him, I'm like, I know you. And he was hired as a session player on the first record, right? And all of these years later, we go back in, and he looked at me and he goes, the day that you came in, I was no longer going to be a session player. I had decided I was done, because people would bring a song and we were supposed to make it beautiful. And he goes, and it was piece after piece after piece, where it was a mediocre song and I was supposed to make it sound beautiful. And he said, that day when you came into the studio and you cried, he said, you don't realize that I saw you, but you walked out into the hallway and you had tears, how beautiful your song was becoming. And he said, when you looked at me and you said, thank you for making my song beautiful, you changed the course of what I was going to do, because I was done up until that day. And so as an artist, we have got to be humble servants, because it's not all about us. The work that the production team does elevates it, because all of the gifts are brought together. And it's not just one person. It can never just be one person. Every one of those gifts are brought together, and it elevates it. And so, Margaret, for you being humble to say what you did, the beauty that they brought to it, and guys, that you're acknowledging the beauty of what she's written, but to elevate it to that, kudos to all. I can't wait to hear this. I need to hear this. So, yeah. Wow.
That's one of the things also, sorry, that's one of the things that, like, I don't know, what was it, like 15, 20 years ago, Chris, when we went to that youth group thing, and you were like, hey, you want to hang out and make some music? I've known Chris for his whole life, his whole life, I guess, but we hadn't really hung out together as friends until then. And I was like, yeah, sure, just because I knew from playing music with him that he had a really good insight into the music. And it was just kind of like that from the very beginning. It was like, I want to work with this guy.
And, you brought up really interesting points, Julie, because something I also wanted to capture in the album was, you'll notice every song starts off very stripped back. There are no songs that really come in immediately with all the instruments or whatever, because I knew that by starting every song off, just having her lay down the basic piano or guitar track and then a vocal track, there's beauty in the song itself without any other instrument. She could go anywhere and play a solo set and it would be just as beautiful. every song starts off with the basic beauty, and then as the song progresses, it sort of crescendos with more instruments, more voices, everything. So no matter where you jump into the song, it's just a beautiful song at its core, and it just builds like a good story. And that's sort of how I saw every song. Was it's a movie. If you close your eyes, do you have this dramatic experience from start to finish? And at the end, you feel resolution, or you feel mixed emotions, or something. Um, but yeah, I was very adamant that everything had to start off stripped back to its core. Temporary, there's a little more going on in the beginning because it's the first song of the album. So it's like you have to catch attention immediately that this is not a typical pop album. So yeah, that was kind of my mindset.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Let me shout out the YouTube watchers right now. If you have any comments or questions, just put them in the chat, and we can get that over to all of our panelists today. Timoteo, good to see you there, and James from South Africa, our South Africa listener. Sean, and Abigail, good to see you. Nicole, thank you for your participation earlier during the Next Right Thing segment. And you said you're going to try and call into Spirit World tomorrow. I'm looking forward to taking your call. And also, let's see, we got Grassroot Catholic. That's you, Keith. Are you commenting on YouTube while you're on the air? Okay.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? I want to participate in the chat while I'm talking, which I had to like find ways to do it.
You got it, man.
I did it.
And then Nancy Gonzalez over on Facebook, watching on Facebook, she's going to be trying to make it to the Dallas event with Debbie and Adam. So when you get there, Nancy, be sure and tell them to tip their producers. And thank you to our Rumble chat. Our Rumble viewers are looking about double the normal one. So, hey, if you guys have any questions, I'll check over there as well. Just put it in your respective chats, and we will get that over to our musician panel here. I had a question. I actually had a couple questions. If you don't mind, Keith, I'll just jump in a little bit. But for Chris, and Margaret, and Julie too, what are some of the go-to inspirations that you have for music? Not just Catholic inspirations, but like musical inspirations. Which artists do you look up to? Where do you find sources for that musical ideas?
Wow. Well, I talked about this a little bit on Enoch's interview that I did like maybe 2 years ago, but I love Enya.
Yeah.
I love her so much. And I think about like, we talk about how, Catholic culture can be influenced by things like Lord of the Rings. Well, she had a track on Lord of the Rings. She had multiple tracks on Lord of the Rings. And it's because her voice captures this beauty that is reflective of the Catholic Church and the Catholic faith and the virtues that Tolkien explores. So it's like hard for me not to like mention this movement and not mention Tolkien, because I feel like he's like the champion of this in culture and language and communication. So anyway, but yeah, influences Enya for sure. I love Ennio Morricone. I love the Mission soundtrack so much. I love all his stuff. I mean, he's amazing. Love Italian film composers, so big penchant for that. And then also just like a lot of pop influences. Like I grew up listening to everything like rock, R&B, pop. I love jazz. So there's a jazz song on the album. So that's another big one for me. I'll let other people go and talk about their
I can go next. I have most of my like musical training is jazz, so I have very strong jazz influences. Jazz, Miles Davis era jazz really shaped my approach to crafting music. And I always like the emotional component of jazz, where sort of the music is saying emotions that are hard to express in words. So love jazz. That's kind of my core. I love Fleetwood Mac. I mean, she can tell you how much I love Fleetwood Mac. But really, Margaret mentioned soundtracks, and soundtracks have been a huge influence for me. Movies, I feel like movie soundtracks capture so much that a lot of just records don't. And so like Hans Zimmer, like I've, kind of studied his music a lot and how he conveys emotions through music. So yeah, jazz, Fleetwood Mac. I mean, the basics, Pink Floyd, the Beatles. Obviously, when I listened to them, I was like, oh, this is it. I'd say those are kind of my basics right
Oh,
there.
can I just say on the end of Burning, the jazz song, first
Mhm.
you can hear the clear, like very clear jazz influence, and at the end is the Hans Zimmer that comes through
Ah.
with horns and the orchestra. And so you hear his influences like so strongly. And then my song was a jazz song already. He just made it like we're trying to make it cinematic. And I think
Yeah.
all three of us have a love for film, and that was definitely something we wanted to convey.
I'll go next. I think growing up, it's such a wide variety. My mom was very active in theater, and I loved the music of the theater, and then Journey. I mean, I love the music of Journey.
Uh,
James Taylor, Jim Croce were kind of root in my life. And then big band. I love big band. There were a couple of projects that back in the day Bette Midler did that brought the big band and to sing along with that. But as a young person growing up, I always thought, oh, it'd be so fun to sing with a symphony, you know. And then you go from wanting to sing with a symphony to just have the guitar and a big body, beautiful. My husband plays a Gibson big body, and he'll just start playing the guitar and I'll start singing, and it's like you go to a different place. So influences are so varied, but little bits and pieces, come out of it. Or to hear one of my favorite sounds is to walk into a very large cathedral and to just make a tone and hear the natural reverberation of the room.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, like I could be in there for hours and just sing a word and hold it for a few seconds, sing the next word of praise and hold it for a few seconds. So, I mean, yeah, it all worked together for me growing up, and all of the different influences come together. So, very
One of
fun.
you
Yeah.
described the new album as like you were trying to build a cathedral of sound, and I think that's the same kind of thing you're talking about, Julie. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's pretty
hate to
cool how
go, but
our
I have to sneak. I
oh,
have to sneak away this morning. But I just want to say, Margaret, I need to reach out because it would be a fun interview with you on We Sing Our Faith.
Let's
So we'll
do
have
it
to make sure we.
Saturdays.
So we'll connect. So let's do that.
We'll get you
Yes.
connected for
Okay.
sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
God bless you all.
Thank you, Julie.
See you,
Oh,
Julie.
thank you.
God
You
bless
You
you.
too.
guys,
You
take
too.
care.
Yeah, that was we'll get to hear Christopher Adams in a second because I know we want to touch on that. But
Yeah.
my goodness, yeah, the cinematic vibe is there. And that was when I was listening to it, sometimes I'm like, I'm just gonna skip through and try to hear as much as I can. But like it made me sit down and I'm like listening to it and I realized I was listening to the entire song because that's kind of how it was made. Like you said, it's like a cinematic journey. So that's super cool that when you said that it clicked for me. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Christopher Adams, you next.
no, it is cool what she was saying about the cathedrals. How ecclesiastical architecture was basically structured so that the music could be amplified, and just reverberate and make an impact on people, for contemplative purposes. It's pretty neat. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that too. Um, as far as my inspirations go, I mean, I would say I have a pretty broad spectrum, right? It's kind of like where do you start? Um, Obviously, ecclesiastical music is something that is a foundation to my background. But I would say that when it comes to a more basic inspiration for my vocals and songwriting and stuff like that, I would say probably, we have Radiohead. We have Tom York. You got people like, well, there's a vocalist from the band. I'm not sure if you know of it, but it's called DC Talk. It's an
Of
old,
course. Yes.
yeah.
Sorry, I guess
So
I'm the
their
oldest one.
vocals
I'm
really,
probably the oldest one here now.
you know them? Okay. Well, their stuff really impacted me a lot. But then there's like tons of other influences as well. I mean, I would say Keane, the band Keane. Keane is the vocalist from there. I can't remember his actual name, but him, George Michael. So it's a broad spectrum.
Yeah.
I tend to really like to go for, like Chris was saying, the cinematic vibe as well with my music and have a pretty broad spectrum there. But yeah, so that's pretty much my influences.
Yeah, I love when the highest level of excellence is merged with a Catholic, a sensibility, Catholic faith and practice. And it seems like you guys are going down that road. I love it.
Yeah. Speaking
Yeah,
of,
well, that's one of the.
oh, sorry, go, Chris.
Sorry.
No, go.
Oh, no, I was gonna say that's one of the things that's exciting about this current movement and what's going on right now. And I pretty much picked up with that at Catholic Palooza, was that the Catholic community has got so much creativity, and there's so many people that are just creative, especially I would say in the Northern Virginia, DC area, who are excited to make music and just haven't been tapped into and haven't been heard. And when I was growing up, the Protestant community was releasing everything. You had DC Talk, Audio Adrenaline, you had all these big bands, and you had these big movements and stuff. Well, I feel like that has been shifting to the Catholic, finally,
Finally.
to our community. So it's
Yeah.
exciting.
It's very exciting indeed. And Margaret, you mentioned kind of earlier in the show about your reversion. You touch a little bit. I want to dive deeper into yours, Chris Adams, but Christopher St. Clair, did you experience that? Are you a cradle Catholic? Well, tell us a little bit more about your faith, and did you have like a reversion or a conversion?
Oh, I'm not a cradle Catholic. I'm cradle Greek Orthodox. But my mom's Greek Orthodox and my dad's Protestant. So I was raised kind of mostly Protestant, but on major holidays, my mom made sure that we, went to a liturgy. I kind of like went through college, went to grad school, all this stuff, and just like didn't really care at all about religion. I was like Christian, but what does that mean? During COVID, when certain places were really trying to shut down churches, and I saw Orthodox churches being like, no, we're not shutting down. Like, people are getting communion, like, we're going to share the spoon. Like, the blessed, the Eucharist does not make people ill. I was like, okay, this is real. Like, people are not joking around. This is real. This is mystical. This is spiritual warfare is real. The devil clearly wants to, clearly hates that churches are open, all this stuff. And so I just started going back to church, went to confession, did all of that. At the time that, Chris Adams reverted to Catholicism, I actually didn't know any Catholics, to be honest. Like, he was the first Catholic that was actually in my life. And he bought the ticket for me to go to Catholic Palooza with him. And then suddenly, everybody in my life was Catholic. And so I was like, okay, the schism has long overstayed its welcome. There actually are not really tangible differences between the churches. Can't we get along? So that's kind of my reversion. Now my entire life is, Catholics and Catholic art, and I go to a Melkite liturgy now. So I've sort of found the balance in between. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Nice.
Very cool. What about you, Chris?
Yeah. So like I said, I was baptized a Catholic as a baby because my family was Catholic. But my father, he protested, right? He got saved, as they say. And it's funny, he married my mother, and to do that, he had to actually go through with his final, he had to go through the final sacraments to actually become a Catholic. And then he did that, and then he went to talk to a priest about it because he wasn't sure. And the priest said, hey, yeah, just read a Bible. So he read the Bible, and he became a Protestant. As is often the case in the 1980s, I think. So I was raised with that. My dad is actually a street evangelist, so he's probably the leading evangelical street evangelist in the the East Coast. And so my converting was pretty dynamic. I will say, our relationship. I respect everything he does. It's just we have a couple disagreements now. But yeah, so Catholicism was not on my radar pretty much at all. I speak Russian, and I lived in Russia for a good amount of time. And so it was kind of like Russian Orthodoxy was a natural trajectory for me. I love the aesthetic. I love everything about it. I love the history. It's just beautiful. And so then that was natural for me going into that. I actually used to sing for an ecclesiastical for their liturgical choir in DC.
Wow.
And so I was pretty much going to be Russian Orthodox. But then, one day, a random event happened where I was on a date and I met an individual who was demonically possessed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Not the girl,
and
but there was someone else.
Oh,
sorry. Well, I met somebody else who was demonically possessed.
Yeah.
It wasn't the girl I was on a date with. That would have been interesting, and that would have made for a very interesting
Just wanted
story.
to clarify.
Thanks, Margaret. That
Yeah,
would
I
have made
have to
for a
run.
very
I have to run, by the way. So
interesting
I
story.
love you guys so much.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing. You guys can continue, of course, but
Yes.
I have to hop because I'm gotta work. But
all right, Margaret.
you guys are amazing. Thank you so
Awesome.
much for having me on, and looking forward to hopefully working with Julie. So
Yeah, I want to hear you on Julie's
enjoy
show.
the rest of the
Okay.
clubhouse.
Take care, Margaret.
All right.
Bye, Margaret.
Bye, guys.
Yeah. So yeah, she's got hustle. I'm a realtor, so I understand that. I have to always don't call. I have my phone blowing up. Yeah, so I met an individual, not the girl I was on a date with, but I met an individual who was demonically possessed. And long story short, he had mentioned things that he wasn't supposed to know. And he knew that I had been watching a couple videos out of curiosity that previous week. I have a private account on YouTube with a VPN. So he knew that I had been watching videos about, I had been watching exorcists and listening to some of the stuff that they had to say. And he specifically referenced the people I had been watching. And he mentioned, various family facts he wasn't supposed to know. And so in the end, he knew the girl I was on a date with's name. He introduced himself to her and said her name. It was very wild. So after that, I went home and, I was shaking, and I wrote to my friend, Saint Wave. I don't know if you know, Greg, but he and I had been talking for years about Catholicism on and off, and I never really kind of agreed with him on anything about Catholicism. And I said, hey man, you know what? We need to talk. Because at one event during that story, I didn't say I had been wearing a crucifix and that I had bought in Guatemala like 2 weeks before that. And I pulled it out and I said, this is the God that I choose. And that's part of the longer story, but I told him that, and his reaction was very visceral.
Wow.
Right. It was a very intense reaction. He said, you like that? You like that Roman Catholic stuff? Yeah. And I was like thinking in my mind, like, no, not particularly. But I had the crucifix, and he was very reactive against that. So I noticed that it was a Roman Catholic crucifix that he reacted against. And I thought to myself, there is one institution that is known to know how to deal with demonic possession and with demons and oppression. And since he referenced my family, I said, I need to talk to Greg Shapiro so I can talk to a priest. So
Bringing it back full circle, because our first segment, Next Right Thing this morning, was about a religious demonologist who deals with exorcisms all the time. So, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Full
There you
circle
go,
today.
context.
Wow. That's incredible. Incredible story. Thank you. My goodness, both Christopher St. Clair and also Christopher Adams for sticking around in the after show clubhouse. Incredible stories, both of you. And thank you for sharing and putting out Margaret Knapp's debut album. It's beautiful. You can find it anywhere we can stream music. Margaret Knapp. All right, so thanks once again for both everybody, Margaret, who's no longer here, and also Julie, who had to leave as well. And thank you, Tim, for helping get this out in the airwaves and also on the YouTubes and the Facebooks and everywhere else on GRN. This is it for the week. We'll see you bright and early Monday morning, 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you bright and early Monday morning. But until then, have a blessed weekend and make it a joyful one. Make it a joyful weekend. We'll see you Monday.